Hi, everybody. It's Byblos, and it's Friday. It's Friday the 13th. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a really lucky day for us because this is our 300th consecutive interview since April 17th, 2020. Happy anniversary to us. This is our 300th anniversary. And I have with me today a designer, a theater designer, and we're going to have a pretty interesting conversation with him, I think. We'll get to that in a second, but I wanted to just let you know if you're out there in YouTube land and if you're a subscriber of the channel, I'm so amazed. We have over 10,000 subscribers. So thank you if you're one of the subscribers. And if you're somebody who's just randomly finding us, let me tell you a little bit about us. We're Theater Resources Unlimited. We're a small, not-for-profit company in New York, and we focus on helping people understand and navigate the business side of theater. Um, we have a special love in our hearts for producers, and we really try to nurture and develop producers. But over the years, we've learned that a lot of people in theater actually produce who aren't necessarily producers. There are writers and there are actors and directors who try to get something happening in their career and it's tired of waiting for somebody to offer them a role or offer them an opportunity. So they self-produce. So we are a company that proudly supports self-producing artists as well as producers. We were New York centric once upon a time. I used to always say we're just a small New York organization. That's what do you want from us? We're small, but apparently since we started this in 2020 at April 17th, we have become global. I sort of say that hesitatingly, but it's true. We have followings in UK, we have followings in Australia, we have people coming in from Malaysia, from Singapore, and all around the country, and Canada, and a handful of South America. I think I got to do better in South America, um, though. So we'll work on that. But so I can no longer say that we're New York centric. We are located in New York, but we're helping a lot of people. And maybe we'll be helping you as well. So thank you for finding us. Thank you for being with us today, and hopefully in the weeks to come as well. Um, our conversations started off just as ways of dealing with quarantine. Remember when we were told we had to go into quarantine and we were going, quarantine? They don't really mean that, do they? Well, they did apparently, and we had all sorts of issues that we had to deal with that were tangential to theater, but definitely important to ourselves and our well-being. We're now based back in a normal-ish world. I have a hard time saying it's a normal world given what's going on politically, but forget political.
Mm.
Just in other ways, it's a normal, it's a normal world again where we have live theater and we have the same struggles that we've always had with live theater and making things successful and finding a way to earn a living in this business. Um, so I had a guest a year or two ago, a set designer named Beowulf Borit, and it turned out to be a very popular conversation. People really enjoyed learning about the ins and outs of becoming a commercial Broadway designer. That's only when I say Broadway designer, for almost any designer, that's just one of the things where they actually practice their skills. Um, but I do have Jeff Mahshie with me today. Got it right, didn't I, Jeff? Jeff Mahshie, and he. It was ironic because when I was talking to Borat, one of the shows that we were talking about was Left on 10th. Do I have it right? Yeah, okay. Left on 10th, which Jeff actually designed the costumes for. So this was just a natural like follow-up. I don't remember how we started talking, but we somehow met online and I said, do you want to come on my show? I meet people online all the time. I meet people in Facebook, wherever. People email me and I just invite them to come on the show. And I'm very happy to bring Jeff on right now because I'm just talking way too much. I feel like I had caffeine, but I didn't. So, Jeff, come on up. Here you are. So introduce yourself to all of us and let us know a little bit about your background. They read about it in my little blurb, but there's a lot more I'm sure you can talk about.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jeff Mahshie, as Bob said. And gosh, I'm so much better at answering questions and kind of talking about myself. But I was telling Bob my career started in fashion. Worked in design really for 30 something years and ultimately wound up working in theater simultaneously. I started like any design assistant would. I graduated from Parsons School of Design here in New York, where you study fine art and then you kind of specialize in whatever you want. After my last 2 years was fashion, and after that, I started working. I started as an assistant and then a designer, senior designer, and then a creative director. My last recent position that I left only in January to pursue this full time was for Donna Karan. That company, I was a creative director there. I helped relaunch it. So all these ads that you see on the bus, kiosks and all that, those are clothes that I did, inspired by, a lifelong career of Donna Karan's, who was also like a critic when I was in college and a mentor for me throughout my career. So it was really lovely to come full circle and to be able to help like kind of relaunch a collection that had been dormant for a while, but still incredibly important, I think, in the world of design. So
I'm going to join you. I'm going to come on now.
yeah.
So let let's talk about what we have in common. We have Halston in common. I was the fragrance writer for Halston, and you actually worked with him.
Well, I had when I was in college, I was an intern at Halston, so which was you know yeah, brief is really right before that company kind of had closed, and then when it was resurrected again, I actually worked as a creative director there twice. So yeah, and plus, I'm a minimalist. That aesthetic was always so aligned with my own, sense of design. So yeah, I've always been. And I was like, I feel very grateful to have like gone to, spend days in like Olympic Tower in the heyday of fashion, and literally like walk in and it was a really unusual place even for back in the day. So it was yeah, an amazing experience, and it was had the ability to work for other iconic American companies as well.
So you said you just implied that you're into this simplicity. You said I forget the word you said, but simplicity of design. Excuse me. And I'm just wondering what what gave you the idea that you wanted to design costumes for theater? I just
I didn't have the
it's a leap. It's a bigger leap than it seems.
No, it is. I mean, listen, my father was an entertainment promoter and he was also in the restaurant business. So we had gone to theater. The theater is like kids. I think like the first time I had gone to see something, it might have been like 15 years old, and so I had loved the theater and started going regularly after I was taken, the first time. Um, so I would always joke that, in my next life, I'm going to work in the theater. And,
Some joke.
and right, well, and then ultimately, things just unfold as they do if you let them in your life, sometimes. And it really was a fluke. I have a friend, girlfriend, the actress Juliana Margulies, and she was doing a play. Um, and I met her through another fashion designer friend of mine, and she was like, "I'm doing this little off-Broadway play." She was playing a therapist. She's like, "I just need clothes. The costume designer is great, but I just need clothes." And we were making some clothes for her. I was like, "Well, take the clothes that we're making," which she did and wore throughout the play. And she walked me through it, and she's like, in this scene, I'm like giving a session. I was like, oh, maybe you'll wear that, Glen plaid suit we made for you. And she's like, now in this scene, I'm running errands. I was like, how about that trench coat and, the pants that we did for you? So we did that. And, unbeknownst to me, buried somewhere in that program was thank you. And after that, shortly after, I was working on a dress for Cynthia Nixon for the Emmys. And Cynthia Nixon's manager had come in for that fitting and said, I saw this play that Juliana Margulies had done. I think maybe this is something you might be good at. Can I introduce you to a director or two? So, which is what she did. And that's how I started designing costumes. The first director I met was a director named Scott Elliott. The play that he had just finished doing The Women on Broadway with Isaac Mizrahi. And he had said, oh, I've worked with fashion designers before. Let me see, I might have a play for you. And he's like, said something about the 80s. I was like, that's as far back as I remember, actually. Before that, it's kind of a blur.
So
So
the 80s was okay. It was like
the
okay.
80s, I just kind of remember, and he's like, I'm doing this play. It was Hurlyburly, and that was the first play I ever designed.
Was that the David Rabe?
David Rabe, yep, it was the revival with Ethan Hawke,
That's what I was
Kim
gonna ask. Well, the revival of the
Bali,
first.
Parker
Okay,
Posey. So yeah, so that was it. And it
Parker
was also
Posey. I
like,
didn't remember she was in that.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
Parker
God,
Posey. I mean, it was
I
the
love Parker
cast.
Posey.
Well, the cast was unbelievable. It was like, and I remember him saying like it's just going to be like 8 to 10 weeks, not a big cast or whatever. And then Ethan had signed on, then Bobby, then Wally Shawn. I mean, it was an amazing, amazing cast. You know.
Now let me ask you: in your experiences in the fashion world, did you ever design for men, or was it mostly women that you designed for?
I did. I would design for men. Like Kira Sedgwick was a client, so she brought in like her husband, which was Kevin Bacon, and then
Yes.
and then
So everything just keeps the theater just keeps rotating around you.
it
It's like
it
you couldn't
does,
avoid
and
theater if you tried.
yeah, and then I forgot what model he was dating at the time, but she was wearing a pair of trousers that we had done, and then we wound up doing clothes for Mick Jagger for his concert tour. I, dressed David Lynch, and then also because at this point when I was getting involved in theater, my manager would bring new actors to me that other established designers wouldn't dress like Laura Benanti or Lee Pace or Jan Krakowski, so and like I said, and Cynthia as well, they were all kind of like not they were at different points of their career, but up until recently, the fashion world, the very, very high fashion world, were only interested in movie stars. It's only lately now with the mobility between like the stage and the screen that that people are more interested in. I remember at a Tony luncheon sitting next to Sarah Bareilles, and we were talking, and this girl taps her on the shoulder, and she's like, I'm from, Vogue. We were just wanting to know if you were sorted for the Tonys, and she looked at her like, what are you talking about? She's like, yeah, I have a dress. Like, now you're asking me like 3 days before if you could help me with some kind of like random dress. So the idea of actresses, theater actresses being dressed by big designers was not done back then. So I built, a lot of relationships that way as well
So,
early on.
since we're a producers organization, I ask a lot of dull questions, but one of them is, um, did you have to join a union to design for Broadway shows, or is it?
You do actually, which I didn't realize. I'd done Hurly Burly, which had done very, very well. It was like, I'd gotten, Drama Desk and Outer Critics and whatever nominations for that. And then the next play I had done was a play called Little Dog Laughed, and that was also off Broadway. And I was transferring to Broadway, and there's a rule that you can only do X amount of like, productions before you have to join the union, So like I said, I had a full-blown kind of fashion career at that point. So I was like, yeah, I don't have time, to like put in like the application that it took to join the union. They're like, no, 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 we will just let you into the union. But because I had already had a Broadway show, like, that I've gone from off-Broadway to Broadway. So that's how, um, that's how I got into the union. I have subsequently like sponsored and like written letters for past assistants while they make their application. But it's an incredibly rigorous, process, and I was incredibly lucky just to be ushered in and into the union. So.
Yeah, it's arduous for many people.
Right, right. I mean, I
Yeah,
have to say, in the long run, it like worked out well for them when they were doing all this rezoning in Midtown. And a lot of the costume shops and all that were being affected by this, potential new rezoning, and the fashion district as well was being rezoned. I had a friend who was a councilman at the time, and that was his district. And, the union had come to me. It's like, you're in the union, you're a fashion designer, and you know this council person. Can you like kind of take up our cause to like, make sure that these homes that have been here for like, some up to like, 100 years in New York don't disappear, and I was able to take a list of requests from the 829 to the council and the CFDA, the Council of Fashion Designers, and make sure that, 600 people weren't displaced. I think, what wound up were like 15 potential businesses were going to be displaced, and they found them new homes. And also, working through with the councilman, we were able to take the, 10% of affordable housing that they were allowing and move it up to like, 25%. So I was able to not, parlay like my costume design, my union membership, and my fashion career into something that was helping the city and the business of the city, which felt amazing, so.
well, thank you for that. That's lovely. Let me ask you something. Okay, again, I'm going to back to how you characterized yourself originally when you were talking about yourself. You said that you were into simplicity, simple design. Has that changed as you design from project to project in theater? How do you adjust to the needs of a particular play? Um, has there ever been anything that you were asked to design where you thought you weren't the right person for it? And were there things where you just thought, oh, this is just a natural for me?
Initially, I was asked to design like, things that took place in present day. Like, there was a trained costume designers don't treat, everyday clothing so, casually. So that really was like the niche that I had filled originally. It was like, or in the recent past. So like things didn't look too costumey. So I was kind of like a go-to for like, you're doing a play that takes place in the present day, and she's like, an Upper East Side like housewife, or he's a suburban dad, or they're teenage kids in wherever. So that's how it started. And I remember initially when the first time I was asked to do a period play, it was I'd done, like I said, Hurlyburly, which was like 80s, which I also like minimized. I took a look at that period, and I went to the director. It's like, if we dress these people like people were really dressing in the 80s, like nobody's going to focus on this play. And I do remember, as much as like I really pared it down and pulled back, there's this actor, Josh Hamilton. He would make this entrance. He was getting ready for a date, and it was like a serious scene. It wasn't supposed to be for laughs. And like every time he made an entrance, like, he'd get like a laugh. It was like, and I keep changing it to, suit the tone of the scene till we kind of got it down to chuckle. But it was, the to yeah. So I always like kind of, sometimes it's necessary, based on like the work you're doing to minimize the period. I also did a period piece for the new group called Bob Carroll, Ted and Alice, and it was 60s. And I went to the director. I was like, listen, I can't do like 60s like everyone does 60s. He's like, no, 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 no. That's what I want you. I want you to do your take on the 60s or 60s light, which we did,
You,
and it
you
was
won an you
really,
won an award for that one, didn't you?
I did. I got a Drama Desk and Not a Critic Circle Award for that play as well. So, yeah, but it was great, and I try to be really thoughtful. My first approach is with anything, how to create the painting in like the least strokes possible, and then not to the detriment of telling the story, but sometimes the story needs to be retold in like with a different take on it, a different eye. I remember when we were doing Kiss Me Kate, which is like kind of a very, very like, it's handled to me the same way all the time. It's very, like Technicolor and, from like the movie to every theater version of it. And I had gone to the director. I was like, this is 1947. Okay. It's like the peak of culture, in the United States, and not to mention, you know, the lead actress openly talks about her Christian Dior wardrobe. 1947 is like a revolutionary time in fashion, especially for in Paris, where Christian Dior has created what they call the new look, which is an answer to post-war, austerity and rationing. So it was like, she's obviously incredibly fashionable. If it's 1947 and she's going to, her rehearsal in Baltimore, like off the plane in like Christian Dior new look, like this is like her costume says a lot about who she is. It's like, why is she there? Why is she there in Dior, like the latest fashion? And I mean, it's to me, it gives a lot of clues. And like I said, I'd really like to handle this in a way where it's like, got a kind of a fashionable or a chic sensibility to it. And the director's like, fine, but like, remember, we can't lose the comedy, which we kept. Like I said, when you work in those silhouettes and the staging of it, just it was innately, it just worked. It was like, a version of it that like I was really, really proud of. It was, the clothes were very, very kind of coveted by, I would hear people, I would get, people reaching out on Instagram. It's like, about them and how they were made and where they were made and can they get them. And so, but yes, I mean, I try to handle that carefully because it is a signature of mine. I mean, I do have to say that, yeah, I try to stay away from things that, don't kind of like speak to me. It's so much better when you connect with a project. It's not that I couldn't do it, like I said, where it's like project recently, the director's like, this actress, wants you. I was like, all right, and so I did it and we did it, together. And although it's like, there's a million other people who could do this, by the way, but I'm happy to do it. So it depends. That answer is, I guess it depends, So on the production and yes, you always want to be able to tell the story and the director's vision. And when you have a good relationship with, your set designer and your director, and you can kind of co-create that together. You sometimes have that ability.
I'm going to ask a question. I don't know if it's going to have an interesting answer or not. I'm hoping it will. Can you describe the process of designing for a label and designing clothing in the fashion world versus the process for having to design things for a specific play and for specific characters?
Um, it depends. I mean, in a perfect world, I like it to be a little more freeform, but when you work for, like a large company and there's an expectation on sales or whatever, you usually start with what they call color and concept. And like I lay out, X amount of colors for the season and be like, you know what? It's a very, very, like, strong season. We're going with like black, white, red, brown, and gray, and keeping it classic. And then, it's going to be the inspiration is going to be based on architecture or fine art or Art Nouveau or this painter. Or, so you come up with a color and concept of something that speaks to you. Like I said, it could be anything from like, the current, like, Biennale at the Whitney, or it can be literally what, like, Chloe Sevigny wore in like Interview magazine, So the inspiration is also instinctual and it can come from a lot of places. But color and concept's the first way you lay it out. You get images to help you tell your story, and then from that, you sketch, you select fabrics, you build, the samples, and then hopefully all of that aligns and you have a collection.
And for when you adapt that and adjust to um, designing for a show, um, well, I think what comes into this conversation would be how you collaborate with a set designer and with a lighting designer, because um, a lot of what you do, I think, has to be um, compatible with what the set designer is doing and what the lighting designer is doing. Is that not true? Or
No, 100%. Like I said, when
okay,
I first started this, and like I said, the first project was like Hurlyburly. I'd worked with the set designer Derek McLean, who's a brilliant, brilliant
I
set
sat
designer.
I sat next to Derek McLean at the opening night of 42nd Street. I will never forget this.
He's a great guy and a really incredible designer. And I had seen the model and then some of the fabrications and stuff. I was like, oh, I was like, okay, now I kind of get what I'm supposed to do. So I took my first play, I took a huge cue from him. Like I said, as of like, so I'm working on a play now, Noel Coward play, Fallen Angels with David Rockwell, who I've done a number of productions with too. So, we honestly will have a conversation even before, the director. As soon as we know that we're on it together, I'll be like, I want this to be really chic, or this should be really minimal. Or he's like, I want this to be like Art Deco. I was like, well, we're gonna have to talk to the director about like, cheating the timeline a little bit. So we have a kind of a conversation before, So when I know the designer, I can call them and be like, what are we thinking? Have you spoken to the director yet? And sometimes we can align before and be on the same page. So,
And I suppose that this lighting designer takes the cue from you, because the lighting designer has to light whatever colors you're putting on that stage in a way that will make them look like those colors.
well, yes, it's true. I mean, but like I said, first, you work it through with like the set and like, it's nighttime and the light shining through here, or it's got like a noir vibe, or it's, very cheery, whatever it is. Like, I mean, I have the ability to work, we all work together. I do remember, and you learn a lot from them. I mean, I had done a play. I'd worked with Don Holder like eight, nine, 10. I don't even know how many Tonys he has now. Um, and he's an amazing guy. And again, it's just like I said, I've had the luxury of like just working with these really talented people who are like, fun to work with on top of it. So we were doing a play once, and I was like, why is that dress not black or whatever? And he's like, how's that? I was like, how did you do that? So he like had changed the lighting for me. And then, there's another scene where it's like, she wears a camel dress. I was like, why does she look green? And he's like, I was like raised 247, two whatever percent. And I was like, now she's camel again. So,
Yeah, people we don't all realize how much the lighting affects what's on
oh, no,
stage.
no, no. It's unbelievable. And I
Yeah.
do so, and like I said, and I used to spend, a lot of time at that lighting board, just to see what they did and how they did it. And I learned so much from Don to a point where he was like, we're doing we're doing Kiss Me Kate, and there's a dance number where, the girls don't have stockings on, and if you don't have stockings, like the lighting affects your bare legs very, very differently. You don't realize it, but and I was like, Don, these girls deserve to look better. He's like, well, I was like, he's like, what do you want me to do? I was like, what did we do when we did, Jennifer and the so and so? He's like, we put her in pink. I was like, well, can't just put the bottom hat. He's like, but I can't, you know. I was like, can you just put the bottom half in pink? He's like, no, I can't. He's like, yes, you can. Remember when you did it for so and so? He's like, you're right, I can. He's like, you know too much now. He's like, get out of here. So it was like, it was like in my desire for that production to be beautiful and flattering. Like I said, I had learned, by the generosity of these other designers, how to, do my job better. So.
Um, I want to remind the room that we really look forward to your questions and to have a conversation with you guys. So please, Owen, do we have any questions in the chat yet, or no?
Not yet, nope.
So guys, ask questions. That's what we're here for. Um, was there what was what was the biggest challenge in terms of shows that you had to design, and what were the problems and what were the solutions?
Um, Early on, I was asked by Michael Greif to do this musical version of Giant for them, and it was like this huge sweeping epic, that went from the turn of the century to the 50s, and
That would be a lot of costumes to design.
250,
Oh my goodness.
and I'd never done anything that big before. And I had just finished Angels in America for him. He was working with the designer Clint Ramos, who's a genius and generous as well. And he was called away on a family emergency. And Michael's like, can you please finish this for me? It's mostly done. And I was really, anxious about stepping in on another designer's work, especially one that I did not know well at that time. I hadn't met him at that time. And, so I did. I wound up kind of like finishing up that for him, and he was able to kind of come back and take the reins, and
And
then
he didn't hate anything you did.
no, he was like,
Okay.
he's like, what can I do for you? I was like, you can take this back now, because I was like, creative director at Halston and Lord and Taylor, and I was working on another play. So I was literally like, for 7 nights a week, I was like leaving my apartment at 7 in the morning. I was getting home at midnight or 1 in the morning, like, for about 6 weeks. So by the time he came back, like my eyes were just like bloody, because I
Oh,
really, and so I was so happy to see him back, and I was so happy that he was happy with, like, what we had done, and we were able to become really, really great friends. And he's such an advocate of mine. And whenever I need, like a suggestion or a helping hand, I can call him, and and he's like more than willing at all times to help me out. So we're doing so I've just finished that. He's like, I want you to do Giant. And I was like, you don't owe me the favor. I was happy to finish that one for you. And he's like, no, no, I want you to do it. It's like, I don't believe you. You have to tell me why. You want me to do that versus any other person on the planet would happily work with you. And he's like, and he turned to me and he said, because I want it to look like they're wearing clothes. I was like, okay, that I'll believe. Like, I mean, that was like, he didn't like the set was
as opposed to costumes.
as opposed to costumes,
Okay.
So yeah, so I was like, all right, I believe you. That I believe. So, yeah.
So
So
that so this is one of my original questions, but it's been kind of answered throughout our conversation, which is, do you have a style? And you actually indicated that right away. You do have a style, and you do have an aesthetic that you that comes with you. It comes along with you.
well, honestly, like I kind of knew it internally, but it was really Derek McLean who's like, kind of like labeled it as minimal realism is what he calls it. That's what he calls my style. So I go with that from now on, minimal realism.
Okay. Andrea Michelle asks, and this is something I was going to ask too. Was there ever a show you turned down because you were not a fan of the script, or if you felt like you were wrong for it as well? I mean, there were
The
many reasons for turning down a show.
Um, the show, The Little Dog Laughed, I was like, I read it as like, I don't get it, and the director,
It
who I
was
was actually,
fabulous, by the way. I loved
Which,
it.
the director who I was actually dating at the time, he's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Come to the reading." He's like, "Come to the reading," and so I was like, because he's like, "What don't you get?" It's like four people are talking at once here. Like, how are you doing that? And so I had like a lot of questions. I didn't really understand like where it was kind of said and how they were doing it, and so I had gone to the reading, and it was much clearer because you have to realize like I don't want to like I mean. I'm a designer, so we work with actors, so I'm gonna just forgive like the name dropping. But when I first done Hurlyburly, like, the first few plays I did, I have a friend, the actress Mary Louise Parker, and she would read the plays to me in the different parts. She's like, you're just hearing it in one voice because like it's not what you do. So I had the luxury of her reading, these plays to me and in the different voices in the different parts. So that helped. And then going to readings of these plays helped. And now I feel I've got a decent instinct, with a lot of it. I mean, I certainly get it wrong on occasion too, but luckily there's a million other people, surrounding you that like, are there to help you get it right. But I turned that down. It was like really like my second play, and he's like, "Do it." So I did it, and I remember when that was going to Broadway, I was meeting with the producers, and they were like, I turned it down twice actually, because then it's being brought to Broadway, and they're like, well, this is the budget. I was like, no, no, it's like I can't do it for that. I've done this twice already, and like honestly, most of the clothes I had borrowed from like, I mean, she wears like Halston and Christian Louboutin shoes and jewelry from a friend of mine. So like, 90% of that like I borrowed or was like given, to it, and so I knew what I needed to finish that play, and they're like, "This is your budget." I was like, this was you have to forgive me, but I'm going to be totally honest. This was a long time ago. I was like, it wasn't my world. And I was like, "Do you see this coat that I'm wearing?" I was like, "This coat is more than that budget, that you're giving me. I can't do it." So I was like, "I so appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I'm going to have to leave." So I'm leaving the theater and my phone rings and it's the director. He's like, "What did you just do?" I was like, "Well, they're telling me about the budget." I said, "I couldn't do it." I said, "Thank you." And he's like, "No, no, no, no. You go back in there, only to find out that, the director, filled in like the blank of like what I needed as far as like, to fill out the budget, because it did okay. He was like kind of paid back, but ultimately, he kind of compensated that budget. But I knew, like I said, I knew what it was going to take. Most of the clothes were like gifted or loaned or borrowed, these like really expensive, like designer clothes that, she drips in that, in that place. So.
So basically, it was not the director, probably the producer had to, okay, increase, you had to increase the budget in order to
Yes,
do that.
which he wasn't willing to do. So, like I said, the director, made up the difference at that for that play. So,
Interesting.
well, like I said, he was all invested in me doing it. It was like it's a very, Douglas Carter Bean is a very like the satirical writer, and it needed to be sharp and chic, and and it was. I mean, she, won a Tony for that role, and I do know that based on, her own comments that like that wardrobe helped her create that character. So, and
Wasn't
like,
there,
yeah, why wouldn't you feel amazing walking out and like, literally like, $12,000 of clothes for your opening scene. So, which was like twice the budget that, I had for the whole play.
well, we got more questions going on here. Let's see, where are we? Owen, you want to pull out some questions for us?
Yes, Catherine Keats wants to know specifically about the design of hats and shoes and how it fits into your style of minimal realism. Do you yourself make the hats?
Yes, it depends. Like I'll try to get a vintage reference, but when we were doing She Loves Me, is like, and that's another thing too, because you battle with the sound designer. It's like a woman or a man is not leaving their house in this period without a hat. They all have to wear hats, so we have to figure out this, and we had to double mic everybody. But it's not even a choice. It's like some of them we could cheat if need be, like by them holding them or whatever. But like a woman's also not walking into a shop and taking off her hat. A man might, but even then when you're shopping, so I found some vintage hats, and then the vintage person's like, "Yeah, you can't use them. It's like you can use them to, as a model for to create new hats." And oh God, I wish Jen, my sister, was here. We use this milliner. He's so good. I'm going to use him again for Fallen Angels, and hopefully I'll remember his name, or we can do it later. What is his name? It's going to drive me crazy because it's so important. So I wanted She Loves Me to start like a black and white movie. And so all those women like, come on stage in these black and white and gray deco patterned dresses, and then as they come on, like, as the scene goes on, she adds like they wear pastel accessories like gloves and hats and shoes that I have to have made to like go with it because I want it to, come to life with color as like the play evolves past like the first scene. By the time Laura, the leading lady, hits, it's like full on color. The set opens, like the color of the perfume shop and like the perfume bottles, and so it was a concept that like I worked intensely on with David Rockwell. He was incredibly helpful and helping me sell that concept and helping me, create it. He literally would like mock up miniatures of like the walls, the set walls, and send them to my apartment, which like, it's like there's this empty wall there, He would have like little miniatures made of it. And then the costume shop would send the rolls of fabric behind. We'd put like the mini mock-up of the printed set wall, the fabrics, and then like the sketches on top of it. So there was like no room for error. He really made it easy for me to like not make a mistake because like, you get into tech and like, it was either like it was one of those things, if it didn't work, everything would have had to have been changed. But it worked, based on his
Yeah.
help. So
So
so anyway, so I want these colored hats, and they just don't exist anymore. The fur felts that you make hats in, and we're looking all over the garment center, and we're trying to like, dye these things, and like it's not working. So I go, he's like, I forgot what he was looking for, but there's a back room in like the milliner shop, and I'm backing up, and I fucking, excuse me, knock into a shelf that a box falls down, and inside this box are pastel fur felts for like hats left over from the 40s, the 30s and the 40s. And they're like, it's covered in dust. And like, that's what we made all the hats out of from Arnold is a milliner's name. I forget his last name, but, so it was like a total fluke. And yes, I had, gloves, the glove company's business that like, their offices that I saved during this thing that I just told you about made me like matching gloves. And then also the shoes were a combination of like, styles that like vintage styles because they have to like dance in them too. And like some were made, some were purchased, some were vintage, some were like, so it just depends. But I'm doing that now. It's something you learn from fashion. It's like the like you start at the bottom of the pyramid, like the shoe builds the collection. So literally right now I have sketches, but my first purchases, the first things that I'm working on for this thing that I'm working on now are the shoes. So it starts from like the ground up, and it's important to know, you know, what works. Like so here, like a little inside secret. That, like I said, we're doing this Fallen Angels now. It's going to take place in 1929. It's like a low little heel. Both the actresses were like, Will goes high as we can. Like it looks better. Like higher heels look better, and they were both for it. So like I said, that's something I'll cheat with, like, a modern shoe, or if I build them, it'll build that. So sometimes I will cheat the period, which other designers won't, to create a more flattering like silhouette for the actor. It's better that somebody like looks better than it be 100%, perfect, especially if it's something that you're not really going to see. So,
So I want to fill in one blank that you didn't fill in earlier. Um, you had to sell your concept to the director and the producer, the director. It also you have a concept, but you have to have a conversation with the director. Was the director open to your concept, this black and white turning into pastel, turning into color, was it a hard sell for you?
yeah, I think because I had, I'd done two sets of sketches, where it was like, kind of like what you would expect with, like, kind of like pastel colored, dresses, and working back to the set, and this whole idea of like the black and white and the colored accessories. And and when I was presenting it, Scott's like, well, maybe we should go this way, David, David Rockwell, what do you think? He's like, it's a risk, but like it could really pay off if it works. So he's like, let's try it, And he's like, all right, I'm willing to give you like the benefit of the doubt, but knowing if it doesn't work, you're gonna have to hustle and fix it. So
Did it affect the set design, the concept?
no, I mean, because it actually helped it, because it was incredibly like decorative, and it really kind of helped show off the set when it first arrives, so. And yeah, no, it worked beautifully together. And then you've got, the other pieces of their costumes, like actually kind of marrying them to that set and tying it in. So
Is it your production that's the live streamed one that we see on Broadway
yes,
HD?
yes, that is
Okay.
I did that one. So
So I'll put a plug in for that. It's because
right.
we just honored Stuart and Bonnie. So Broadway HD usually runs this production of She Loves Me. We should all go see it now that we.
It's literally the first production they ever did for Broadway HD. It started it, so She Loves Me was the very, very first one they had ever done.
The
So
universe is so clever with me. It's like we just honored
yeah.
Bonnie and Stuart on
Yeah.
Sunday.
Yeah, no, and it was like it was so great to actually, like, see that. It was like, because so there's one scene, and I always love doing this. Like when everything's done, I like to kind of go and do like a shop and like fine tune it, and um um let me see. I'm trying to think. Mr. Marichek, the actor who I know forever and very, very well, which is
I should
well,
know this.
yeah, I want to say it's
It's
not.
not Boyd Gaines, because that was
No, no,
something
because
else.
Boyd was the original lead in She Loves Me, but it'll also come to me now that I'm getting older. So I'd found these like M cufflinks from like the 30s, that like nobody was going to see on stage except for me. And then they do it on Broadway HD, and he goes to like take a phone call, and you see his you know,
So your
Byron
detail,
Jennings, thank
your
you,
your
thank you.
your details
Yes,
actually got some
Byron, I
flavor.
appreciate. Yeah, that's good. I forget we've got help here. So, and he's wearing this M cufflink, that you see, because they had done it on Broadway HD. So, like that little thing that I did for him and us, and really, like I said, when they did that Broadway HD version in the movie theaters, and he picks up that phone, and I see that M cufflink that, like, I found, it was yeah. So, I love little things like that. There's always some little Easter egg for that actor. Hopefully, if when I go back and I have time to do it, when I was doing like Next to Normal, I really wanted Alice Ripley to have a signature as a mother, and we fought over this locket. She's like, I don't know. I said, just try it, please. And so she very begrudgingly would take it on and off and whatever. And inside this locket, I put a picture of like the actor, that plays her son, in it, who's like, if you know the story, there's like an emotional kind of connection to it. So I just knew at some point, because I knew her, like she's going to open that. And she's sitting there during tech, and like we're getting ready to do that number, and she opens the locket and sees the picture of like her, son in the play, and she like closes it and she holds it to her heart, and like which she proceeded to do like every performance after that. So like sometimes you can give them that little bit of something, so I mean, sometimes it can go the other way too. Kelly O'Hara,
Oh.
when we were doing Kiss Me Kate, I'd found a ring, like a pinky ring, like, from the 40s, and it has an L on it for like Lily Vanessa. It's like whether she's Kate or whether she's Lily. I was like, you wear this ring. It's your little, like security thing or whatever. So she's like, oh, I love that. She's wearing it, whether she's dressed in the 16th century or like in 1947. And they're doing I Hate Men. Okay. And there's one point where she like holds the door closed to keep the guys out. And then they pull it open. Well, the ring has got caught in the door handle of that, and they're pulling the door open, and she's screaming, because they're like, fingers caught, they're pulling on it. So, so
Ouch.
so I was like, you don't have to wear that ring anymore.
So that
So
was a costume malfunction.
there's a major, major malfunction. It was really like, they almost like ripped her finger off for God's sake. So,
Ooh.
so I mean,
Ooh.
but no, it was like in there, she's screaming, and I was like, stop, 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 which is the thing you never want to do, like have them stop for a costume problem, during tech, like lighting, sound, whatever set, you never want that, them that hold Jeff, like hearing that old thing to like, that you never want. So, but so yeah, so they go both ways. Sometimes it's that perfect little touch. Sometimes it's, it can be life changing in either way. So
I just want to insert that I love Alice. I just love Alice Ripley.
she's
Um,
great. She's great. She's perfect at that. And, and the beauty of that is like, if you get nominated for the Tony, I can design your Tony dress too, which like,
did you?
yeah, I did. I mean, the 18 Tony dresses I've designed, each actress has won their Tony, just FYI.
Oh, that is
So,
great.
so
That's
yeah.
amazing.
So yeah, but like I said, through that
You're the guy
relationship.
that was afraid to come on for Friday the 13th. Well, never mind.
Well, speaking of Friday the 13th, like, I never thought I was like superstitious. And this is the one that I don't have, like Friday the 13th, but like it's being in the theater that has like given me all of my superstitions. I was like, we were at some party and like friends were talking, and I was like, I'm not superstitious. And my friends were like, you're probably the most superstitious person we know. And it's only, in the 25 years or whatever, 23 years that I've worked in the theater, because each actor has their like kind of own superstition. I was like, oh, that's good. I remember Kelly Bishop. We were doing a play, and I bring in like she wears a robe, and I found this beautiful like vintage like silk robe, and she's like, "Is that a peacock feather pattern on it?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I think it is." And she's like, "Oh," and I was like, "What?" She's like, "They're bad luck in the theater, especially for actresses." So I was like, fair enough. She's like, no, no, if you really insist. I was like, I'm not insisting that you wear it. So I don't even like, use them at all for anything anymore. I was like, she's like, no, no, it's literally just like in the theater, and I said, nah, why tempt fate? So, you know,
Okay.
but anyway,
God.
so that's one of the 8 million that I have.
I
Peacock
gotta
feathers
say,
in
I
the
gotta say,
theater.
you drop the very best names. I love listening to you. I love talking with you. This is great. Um,
Well, like I said, I have like the luxury of like, being able to like kind of work with these people. And I do remember out of everyone that I've worked with, like the first musical I saw was A Chorus Line. So I was like, so I walked in, it's like, can we please just get this out of the way now? And she was just like the most lovely person. She had like the most like cutting, sharp sense of humor. It was like, she's not what you think, it's like she's really like she's total like she's the last of the broads, like those smart ass kind of like, broads. She's like the last, it's in
the
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 best way ever, you want to
the,
hang with her.
the Eve Arden lineage.
Kind of, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, she's great. She's great and fun and funny and such a good actor.
Um, oh, and we have a couple more, I think.
Yes, we have a question from DW Gregory asking, have you seen shows where you felt the costumes did not serve or undercut it in some way, or conversely, where costumes very much elevated the show?
It's hard to like comment on other people's work, but like I do have to say for the most part, like I can usually understand the choices, but I went to see, and granted, like they have 2 weeks and it's a like a quick turnaround or whatever, but oh no, I can't say this because like so this is gonna get out to that designer who's like doing like the best that they can. But yes, the answer is yes. I've seen things where like I've done a way better job with that, and then I do also remember the converse of that where I literally saw Follies 7 times because Greg Barnes is a fucking genius. It's like he's so brilliant. And I remember, like I literally like I had to go back. Like the first 2 times I didn't pay attention. It's
You're
one of
talking
my
about the
favorite.
original cast.
This like I guess last revival
Okay.
of Follies and yeah,
Because
that he
the
had done.
cast and the costumes in the original were spectacular.
I mean, these ones that he had done were really the most spectacular. Like, do I have it somewhere? Okay. Right. It just goes to show you like what a generous guy he is. He like, we were at the Tonys and we're nominated for something that same year. And, he has gathered himself, Paul Tazewell, who else? Like, there's like William Ivy Long, and they're like, we just wanted to like, because this was like I was really relatively new at it, and it was definitely my first nomination. They're like, we just want to say like, you bring something different to this, world than we do, and like we're just so happy that you're a part of it now. When I was like, like in the aisle of Radio City at the Tonys, like during a break, and it was like he's a lovely guy and a generous guy, and I was like, I'm obsessed with Follies. Those were the most beautiful costumes I've ever seen. And like the next day, get a knock on my door, and a messenger has sent that sketch over because he's a brilliant illustrator. So like where I work in a very, very kind of like rough way for like, sketching, he does these like fully painted ones. The costume shop is like, we wish they were a little more like yours because they're quicker, so like that's his like, this is here's Kelly for Fallen Angels, one of the dresses that she wears. So like mine versus his. So it's a
It's
different,
lovely, but it's a
but it's
lovely
a
sketch.
it's a different vibe, So I so revere that,
So
and
who's
also
who's who's she co-starring with in Fallen Angels? It's basically it's the two women. It's their show.
Kelly O'Hara, Rose Byrne, Chris Fitzgerald's doing it. Marcos Suelos plays Maurice, and then Asif. I don't remember how to pronounce his last name because he's the only one that I don't know, and it is playing Fred, Kelly's husband, and that. So it's also like a great cast. Like I know all those actors with the exception of the one, and yeah, it should be an amazing.
Is that coming here? It's in New York.
Yeah, yeah. March 27th previews roundabout. It's reopening the Todd
Uh,
Hames Theater.
Unbelievable, unbelievable.
Yeah,
And for those of you who don't know, it's a fabulous Noel Coward play. It's very funny, and it's a great vehicle for it. I always think of it of the two actresses. It's really their rivalry that is at the heart of it.
right.
Um,
And we did a kind of a benefit version of it one night, and we are all kind of like, was that really good, or were we like, And then that's how it got born because like, it's not typically what any of us has done in the past, and everyone just connected to it, so and they were so good, like with like 2-day rehearsal, like it was unbelievable, like how they it's good, it was hysterically funny. There is nobody funnier than Kelly or Rose Byrne, and so we're lucky. It's
well,
going
let
to be
me
a
just
great.
say that the one production I saw of Fallen Angels was when I was about 18 or 19 years old at the Playhouse in the Park in Philadelphia, and it was Hermione Gingold and Carol
Oh,
Bruce.
wow. Uh,
And I met Hermione Gingold, which was memorable. I have I have a story about that, but I won't tell it today. Are there other questions?
Yeah, we have a question from Simone Monet Walls. How big or small is the design community on Broadway, and any tips for young beginners who want to join the community?
I mean, it's like I said, I was kind of like ushered in this like little way, so I know, to me it's small because like I know a handful of like directors and designers and set designers. Like, I tend to work with like the same like five-ish, directors and set designers, and lighting designers too, based on, you know you meet one director through another director, uh, and through each theater. So it can be small, but then, as I do more, honestly, now this like second half of my career this year, specifically, where I've also been, I'm getting ready to co-produce my second play. That, when you start in this world, you get sent a lot more plays, and you spend time with like a lot of newer designer directors and things. So it's only now, and like after the years that I've done costume design, am I meeting other directors and designers and set designers through this new producing kind of leg of my career. So
So,
that does that answer the question?
I think it's helpful.
But it can
It's
seem small, but like there are a lot of people, and as far as like new people, I always try to take on, like some kind of like new intern, like new assistant. If somebody reaches out, I'm always happy to like speak to them, like impart anything I may know to help. Like I said, write a recommendation, speak at, wherever. So I'm more than willing to help. I do have to be honest with you, like I don't think everybody is kind of cut out for it. The groundwork that it takes to kind of pull all this together is like, it's work, and to like look and find the things that you need, and to kind of like uncover it. You have to have a passion for it. And like I said, it can be physical. So like kind of dig through, all of those like whatever like clothes to find the perfect like sweater vest, or go to like, some outskirts of like Brooklyn to look at vintage, jewelry, or, even like when I work in town, there's this one vintage dealer I love working with, but like it's literally like, like figuring out how to make it through this like horde to pull out the perfect, whatever that may be, watch, cufflink, bag. But and I do it myself. I'm more than happy to like, I wouldn't ask anybody to like go somewhere or find something that I wouldn't do myself. And it's just that interest that's so crucial to this. You really have to, be interested in doing this. So
I guess because a lot of us know, I know a lot of people who go to FIT, and I know we have people in Parsons and all that. Um, do you happen to know how much, how often are people taught design in terms of theater? It seems like it's mostly the fashion industry that people are studying. Where do you
well,
go
I
to
mean,
where do you go to study theater design?
NYU, Susan Hilferty runs the costume design, theater design department there. Yale has one. I have a really good story about Kate Burton. I was at a party, and I'm standing with like a group of friends, other actors and things, and she's starring in The Constant Wife on Broadway, which was like, I saw the photos, it looked beautiful, and she walks in and talking with my friends, and she kind of just, just Kate Burton, she kind of commands the room, and she's like, oh, so have you seen my play yet? And I was like, I haven't, Kate, but I've got tickets for Wednesday. But I have to say, from the photos, it looks beautiful. And she's holding my hand at the time and talking to like, the group of actors that she knows all of there. And she's like, it's a beautiful production. It's like, was it, I forgot who the designer was. Like, she's marvelous. She went to Yale. They all did. And she looks me dead in the eye, except for you, Yeah, I was like, Kate, that's true. And like, God bless Josh Charles, who like literally like slaps her on the back and goes like, doesn't seem like it hurt him much, Kate, So, but like I said, I grew up going to the theater and we did study costume and costume design and fashion history and history, you know, um, the 4 years of art history, the 4 years of fashion history. That's how when I did Kiss Me Kate and her first line is like, my new look mink, I know exactly what she means, so, you know, but yeah. And also too with this, like with Fallen Angels, it's Art Deco, it's like the 30s, it's a very influential period in fashion. They've just invented the bias cut. If she's going to Paris to realize, have her home re-realized in Art Deco. She's probably going to Paris to buy her clothes too. So her clothes are all inspired by this French designer, Madame Grey. So it goes hand in hand with like the set, the period. Where if French Art Deco is her reference point for her home, why wouldn't French fashion be her reference point for her clothes as opposed to her, upstairs neighbor? She's decidedly like very, very English in what she wears. So, you
So to state the unstated, basically, you're saying that your inspiration for any play that you're going to do is going to be the script. You're going to be looking through the script to find clues that will help you understand who these people are and how they would dress.
yeah.
DW makes an interesting statement. I'm wondering how costumes can contribute to meaning. And I know what she means in terms of sets. I know where the set has defined the concept for an entire show. Are there times where you feel like the costumes are influencing interpretation of the piece itself? In other words, going the other way rather than you being influenced by it, have you ever influenced the play?
Well, like I said, like I look at Giant or like I look at anything that Michael Greif does because he loves a very kind of, abstract set. Like the only thing that tells you where they are and what time it is and like the vibe of it is like what they're wearing. It's like, there was like an oil, whatever, they give, one piece, there's a one piece of the set, like, in Giant. So like what makes them live in like 1910, 1930, 1940, 1950 is like the way they dress and is it like a party scene? Is it like lively? Are the colors like helping to tell that story? Or is it like the funeral, and like the second scene of the first act, So, yes, I think depending on like the production of the set, yes, the clothes tell you like, like when we started Kiss Me Kate, I went to Preston Boyd who I was like, you're the first one on stage. Like, there's a ghost light, on an empty stage. Like, you're telling us who we are and where we are, by like what you're wearing, So that's like your first clue. So
Well, I'm going to wind up. I think there's a couple of questions we're going to ask you after we go off air because I think there's some controversial questions that you might not want to answer for 10,000 people out there. Um, Let me see though. Connect you in time. Yeah, well, she's just saying costumes through shifting styles can also anchor you in time, of course. Um, Thank you so much. I'm going to say a few words to the YouTube and in sort of wrapping this up. Jeff, it was great interviewing you. I think we met on LinkedIn or something. I'm trying to remember what it was, but
well, I think it feels like a director friend of mine that might have put us together, but I could be wrong too. God knows I often am, when it comes to where and when I've met somebody. So, but
well, I'm going to be back in a second. I want to thank you. I want to thank the people in the room for being here, and also for thank you all for asking really good questions.
yes,
Appreciate
yes,
it.
yes. Thanks everyone for like attending and like listening, and hopefully like you all got something out of it. So,
Okay.
because I enjoyed being here and your questions. It was great.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to just say thank you to my YouTube viewers out there, those who were looking for us and those who randomly found us. Uh, Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoy this, and I hope that if you have an interest in theater and in the arts, you may want to actually be part of our Zoom audience and come in here and be part of the questions and that are asked and the conversation. So I can make that happen. So just email me at trunltd@aol.com. That's trunltd@aol.com. We'll be happy to invite you every week. Next week, we're doing something very different from today and very different from most of what we've done. I'm having some guests come on who are producing works by people that they were very close with who have passed away. We're going to talk about the sensitivity issues in actually bringing to, well, actually keeping the legacy alive of somebody that you love, as well as the sensitivity issues in terms of bringing the show to the stage and how you can collaborate and be honest and authentic to the voices of the person that you're memorializing. Um, it'll be a sensitive conversation. I think it'll be an interesting one. And I've got lots of things coming in the weeks to come. Trust me, you know me. This is the 300th one we've done. There'll be another 300, I promise you. So if you want to support us, that would be great. This started off as a service, a community service, because we were all so lost during quarantine. And so, of course, everybody was welcome to come for free. Everybody is still welcome to come for free. There's another reality coexisting, which is that we have bills to pay. So if you ever want to support us, you can always pay to come in. It's $12 basically for the base price of coming and being part of this, or free. It's free is still good, and you can become a true member, which is $95 a year. So you can go on our website, truonline.org, truonline.org. It's truonline.org, and join as a member. Look at other things that we're doing. We have workshops and all sorts of stuff. And if you want to give us a donation, you can go to TruDonate, trudonate.com, trudonate.com. All donations are welcome, and we welcome you as well to be part of the community and look forward to seeing you, well, at some point in the future. Thank you.